Happy belated Halloween, and we're back with a quick video on Ghostwatch, a new Blu-ray edition released by 101 Films. Obviously, we covered Ghostwatch last year.
Oh no, it was 2 or 3 years ago.
Was it?
Yeah.
I can't remember. But we did the film. You know, classic. 1990. Well, it's 30 years, isn't it? So 1992. It was released on BBC One. Supposedly a live broadcast. A lot of people, it wasn't obviously, but a lot of people thought it was because this was the age before the internet, so you couldn't check things out on the internet like you can today. And it fooled a lot of people.
It did, yeah.
It scared a lot of people. BBC got lots of complaints.
Yeah, tens of thousands of them, yeah.
Loads of them, and 2 children were diagnosed with PTSD after viewing it apparently as well. So we thought we'd come back because they've just literally released this. Obviously we're now a few days after Halloween, so pumpkins are still out, but it's all good. Or maybe a bit rotten now. Or maybe we're filming this near Halloween. Yeah, something like that.
Pre-recorded, like Ghostwatch.
It's just like Ghostwatch, but not as spooky. Although you never know. Talk us through the Blu-ray.
So it's from 101 Films. It's one of their Black Label releases, which I don't know. They seem to have changed the format on these. They used to come in sort of quite flimsy card sleeves with just a booklet and the film. The last couple of releases, they released Johnny Mnemonic.
Right.
I don't know, 2 or 3 months ago, and that came in a sort of a hard case like this one and had a bit more stuff with it. So I don't know if they're trying to go for a sort of Arrow Second Sight kind of, a bit more premium edition kind of deal. So it's in a nice slipcase with some newly commissioned artwork, and then inside you get obviously Ghostwatch itself. We'll come to that in a minute. You also get an annotated script. It's basically the original script that I used, which was annotated by Leslie Manning, the director, and just highlighted stuff and drawn little pictures in the sides and all sorts of interesting stuff. Not all the lines are in the actual broadcast, but that's the full script you've got there. A booklet which has 3 different sort of essays in it. The first of which is called Extrasensory Perception Management, which is by Sarah Appleton, who is a documentary filmmaker, and she actually made a documentary called Found Footage Phenomenon, in which Stephen Volk, the writer of this, was interviewed, and it sort of talks about how at the time when Ghostwatch was broadcast, it was kind of new. There wasn't anything like that, and people, they trusted what they saw on the TV, and they believed, well, especially as it was the BBC, a lot of defund the BBC and all that these days, but back then, it was a very trusted organisation that would tell the truth, and people weren't expecting to be fooled and taken in by their broadcasting, particularly when you have someone like Michael Parkinson, hosting it. It talks about that. It mentions the documentary Hypernormalisation by Adam Curtis, which again was actually on BBC a few years ago. I'm sure I've watched it, but I don't know. It's still on iPlayer, so I might check it out again. I remember I definitely watched the trailer,
Right.
but that is all about the sort of the post-truth era that we now live in, and fake news and all that stuff. And Ghostwatch is sort of misinformation and fake. It presents itself as real. So it is sort of looking through it from a lens of today and comparing it to what we have now. And of course, it was before Big Brother and all those sorts of reality shows. It also mentions how it was influenced by the news programmes of the time, because obviously the Gulf War was very recent. It was sort of the first war that the UK had been involved in, where we could watch it. There's loads and loads of footage. There was reporters all over the place. You saw the famous footage from the cruise missiles. Mm-hmm. There was like infrared footage, which they employed in Ghostwatch, even though apparently infrared doesn't pick up ghosts, if ghosts are such a thing. But they used that, it was new technology, they used that in Ghostwatch to give it that sort of authentic news. People were used to seeing that on the news, so again they associated it with a factual programme. All of these things that made it more believable. And then the next one is, it's called Ghostwatch As It Happened, which is written by Tim Murray, who's a journalist, and he basically looks back at the reaction sort of to the broadcast, the aftermath of it from both sort of newspapers and the viewing public. Initially, the newspapers were quite quiet about it. But once a couple of days, I think it was broadcast maybe Friday. I think the 31st was.
Right.
And over the weekend, the sort of the irritation, the sort of anger of the viewing public grew, and come the Monday morning, loads of headlines about it and stuff through all the press. And finally, there's a short story by Stephen Volk called 3110.
Oh, that was like a sequel, wasn't it?
Yeah, so basically it picks up sort of 10 years later, so 2002, and it sort of imagines that Ghostwatch really happened, it was real. Sarah Green was never heard from again, and Michael Parkinson has completely erased the memory of it. He doesn't have any memory of that night.
Spoiler alert, by the way.
Yeah, well, true, yeah. Whoops. The studio that it took place in has been boarded up, for the last 10 years. So, but the BBC want to do sort of Ghostwatch 2, and ask Stephen Volk to be involved.
Right.
So it's sort of short story of what happens with that. So yeah, good little booklet, some great stuff in there. And finally, the obligatory postcards.
Of course.
So which feature similar artwork to the rest of the box, and it's always in really tight. Yeah. I can't get it out, but anyway, you get the idea. It's all just the sort of the participants. There's Craig Charles there on the front, all in the sort of same style as the packaging.
Great.
So yeah,
nice box set there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so on the disc, there's not a huge amount on the disc, but there's enough, I think. So there's a brand new documentary, Do You Believe in Ghosts, which features most of them. I mean, if I say who it doesn't feature, it doesn't feature Craig Charles, doesn't feature Mike Smith, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago. Sarah Green is on there, Stephen Volk, who wrote it, and Leslie Manning, who directed it. And is it the director and writer of Host?
Director and writer, or director and producer, of Host, yeah.
Of Host, which was I haven't seen it, you've seen it.
Yeah, it's really good.
It was like an internet.
It was
Zoom.
made during the pandemic, and it was like a Zoom sort of seance kind of thing. I think it's only just over an hour long, but it was really good, really well made, and a really sort of fun thing.
Yeah, I'd quite like to watch that. But they're on here, and they kind of talk about how this obviously influenced them to make that, and a lot of the things. There are a number of things in that film that kind of hark back or mention this, or I think is there a password in it, which I think is the date that this went out.
Well, in Host.
In Host,
oh, right, yeah,
someone's password, I think, is the date that this went out on the TV back in 1992. The documentary was really good, I thought. Especially, I'm mostly listening to, I think, the writer and director of it. What they had to say was really interesting. And then there's Shooting Reality, which is mostly Leslie Manning talking about the script, which you've got in the booklet there. But it's mostly just her talking about, like you say, she's made all these marks, and a lot of the marks are kind of, either where there's going to be a VFX effect, or
there's graphics
behind them, and different bits because it was quite a complicated shoot. We may have spoken about this when we talked about the film, and obviously we're not talking about the film, but obviously it's supposed to be a live recording, but the stuff that's in the studio and the stuff that's at the house were filmed at two different times, like a couple of months apart. But then she's then got to kind of slot them back together. And this was 30 years ago, when nowadays it probably would be quite easy digitally. In those days, it just wasn't as easy as it possibly looks. And so she's got to know when they're filming what bit that's going to slot in when they're doing the live stuff in the TV studio. And also, interestingly, when they're in the house, they're watching TV, which has live footage, which obviously had to be filmed beforehand. So there's a lot going on in this. And so I think she kind of breaks down the script, which is that's quite interesting. It's quite short, but that's quite interesting. And then there's two commentaries. There's a commentary with the writer, the director, and the producer, and there's another commentary with two film historians, Shelley McMurdo and Stella Gaynor. I watched some of that. That was a bit odd because I don't think they're watching the film while they're talking, so they're not reacting to what's on screen like usual commentaries do. I don't think that's the case. Whether it was done during lockdown, of course,
it sounded like one of them was maybe on Zoom or something. Yeah,
exactly. So it was a kind of a lot about them talking about how old they were when they saw it, and the reactions that they got from that. But like I said, I didn't watch the whole thing with them commenting on it. In fact, I didn't watch the other one with the director. But that was on.
That's on the. So yeah, there was a BFI DVD back in 2002, I think.
Right.
And that had the commentary with Stephen Volk and Leslie Manning and was it Ruth Baumgarten, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And yeah, so I watched. Yeah, I listened to some of that at the time when we recorded that, and that had lots of interesting tidbits about the filming of it and so on. And yeah, the shooting reality thing about the script was also on that BFI disc. I mean, the only thing that this doesn't have, which is on that DVD, was it had Stephen Volk's original treatment from March '91, and is the screenplay from '92, which I'm assuming is that.
Yeah.
And also a short story called Three Fingers, One Thumb,
right.
Which, yeah, so they're sort of on the disc. It's one of these ones where you put it in your computer and you can, print them off or download them as a PDF.
Yeah.
So I can't say I've ever done that, but they're on there. But they're obviously not on. They're not on this or in any of, apart from the actual script. The other two, the treatment and the short story aren't in there. I mean, 101 have released this on DVD, in the past. It was a few years ago. They released it on its own and with the stone tape as well. But that didn't have any of the BFI extras on it. So it's good that they've managed to obviously get those for this release. So it's apart from those, like I said, those two little things, those two PDFs that aren't on there, it's pretty much comprehensive release.
I think it's a really nice release. One thing I was going to say, one thing I loved actually that came from the documentary, which obviously if you watch it you'll get it yourself, but I loved, they were talking about when it went live, they were all off like somewhere else in London having a bit of a party, watching it on on the TVs. But apparently back in those days, I think it was Whitehall or White City, which is where the old BBC studios were.
Yeah.
They had these big screens in the foyer, and it was being played on that.
Oh,
and a lot of the people, like crew and or people that worked for the BBC, were looking on it and going, "What on earth is going on in the studio?" Because of course at the end of it, the studio goes crazy. But of course they're off having this big party and stuff. So I thought, there's some great little tidbits in the documentary and the commentary as well, which is because it's so iconic this, and obviously a lot of people will remember watching it live on the TV. But obviously go back to our review of the film and listen to us talking about that back then. I think it's a really nice set. I think it's been really nicely done. Yeah, it's got some great stuff on there, and it's limited, isn't it? This
the Black Label one, I think they're 3,000 normally. So I would assume they'll release it, just that once, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 months. To pick it up because this is $24.99, which is. I mean, I suppose that's the same as the Arrow and Second Sight and all the rest that release these sort of hard cases with the stuff in. So I mean, I'd normally expect maybe a few more extras. When you compare them to the Arrow and other companies, they're usually completely rammed with stuff. Do. But I guess they've put on what they can. It would be nice to have heard from a few more participants in the documentary, but again. If people don't want to take part, there's nothing they can do about that. So,
absolutely.
I guess they've done what they can. So, one thing that I'm sure a lot of people are interested in what the picture's like, because obviously this was recorded on video, because it was for a TV broadcast, which obviously doesn't particularly translate well to HD, because it's the sort of picture information just isn't there. And don't expect some massive leap over the DVD. I've still got the BFI DVD. I put them in 2 different players and switch between them, and this definitely looks better. Yeah. But it's not night and day. It's still, you can see it's an old TV broadcast. But I think it does clean it up a bit, and it does so the text is a bit clearer. There is an improvement, but it's not. You're not going to go, wow, this is amazing, because it's not, it wasn't HD. There's not, they can't get that, they can't get out of it what isn't there. The picture information just isn't there. So they've done the best they can with it. It is in 50i, which is interlaced, which is, the right format, because sometimes, when this TV stuff gets released on HD, they mess up the format, they put it in progressive and it shouldn't be, and it's sped up or it's slowed down or whatever, but there's none of that going on here. So it's it's as it was originally broadcast. Yeah, don't expect any miracles from the picture, but personally I thought it was definitely an upgrade from the DVD.
Yeah, I thought it looked fine. Yeah. And obviously these days with extremely good TVs and.
I mean, they do their own upscaling, don't
and
they?
things like that.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So
the good. I mean, it is. You kind of don't want it to look too amazing because you know it.
That's part of the charm,
it's
isn't
part
it?
of the charm.
And in the US, I mean, I know a lot of people in the US are interested in it. I think it was available to stream on Amazon for a while, but it hasn't been on there for quite some time, I don't think. And I don't know if it's ever been released physically over there.
I don't know. I mean, they talk on the documentary about the Blair Witch. Obviously, the Blair Witch came after this, and did they not know about this when they made the Blair Witch? I mean, I think the guys from Host who made Host, I think they spoke to the director of Blair Witch or something like that, and they mentioned that. Well, apparently, at one time they said they hadn't heard of it, and another time they said that they had heard of it. I mean, I don't know. The world was kind of going that way anyway, so it's not a million miles.
I mean, Blair Witch wasn't the first found footage, and
no,
I mean, I wouldn't really class this as found footage particularly. I suppose. I guess it's in that sort of ballpark.
Yeah, I think the guy from Host said this is one of the greatest found footage films ever made. But I thought, well, it's not found footage really. It's because it's supposed to be live, so it's not it's not like it went out live. They all disappeared, and then they found the footage like 20 years later and unearthed it, and this is what happened.
Exactly, yeah.
It was supposed to be live, so it's not technically a found footage film, but it's in that same world.
It's in that neighbourhood, I would say, definitely. So, it's coming out in the US on the 13th of December. I think it was originally supposed to be out in October, but I'm not sure what happened. Whether it's going to be this full set with all the the gubbins in it, I'm not sure. I can't tell. I mean, on Amazon, it only talks about the extras. It doesn't mention anything about the booklet or anything, so I'm not sure. At the moment, I think Amazon have got it listed for $19.99, so that's quite cheap. Whether it's just the disc, I'm not sure. But even if it is, it's still worth picking up. These bits are nice to have, but that's what you're really there for, is for Ghostwatch itself. So if you are in the US and you're a fan of it, then go for it. I don't know what, because again, it's different picture format over there. And what it'll be in the US, I don't know. It's all very technical, but hopefully, whatever they're going to do to it will be as faithful as possible to the original broadcast.
Well, when it does come out in the US, and if you're watching this and you picked it up, then stick in the comments below. Let us know what it is, what you got, what it looks like, what you think of it. Yeah. And
this one is region locked to be, because I put it in my multi-region player, which was set to A, and it wouldn't play. I was like, what the hell's wrong with this bloody thing? It didn't bring up a message to say it was on the wrong region. It just wouldn't play it. I was like, oh, it's set to region A, isn't it? And of course I changed it, and then it played it fine. So it's definitely locked to region B. So if you want to import it, because you can't wait until December, then you'll need to be able to play region B, and also display 50i and all that business, which is, I don't know, it's a bit too technical for me, but so bear that in mind if you want to get hold of it. I mean, Amazon, there seems to be shortage of it on Amazon itself. They listed it for ages. I nearly pre-ordered it on there, but I went to HMV in the end. But Amazon don't seem to have had any stock, and it's just marketplace sellers on there now at the moment for selling it for over 30 quid. So can you get it on their website? Yeah, you can get it directly from 101. Yeah, absolutely. Whether they've sold it, I can't imagine they've sold it. I imagine it's just a supply issue. The state of this country and supply chains at the moment doesn't really surprise me. Yeah, no, definitely recommended.
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't got it myself. Don't know, £25 at the moment. Yeah, we'll see.
Maybe get just a disc, and that
I might just go for the disc. Yeah. So really good box set from of Ghostwatch from 101 there. So that was Ghostwatch from 101 Films, and as always, if you enjoyed the video, let us know in the comments below. Yeah, come and find us on social media, and hopefully we'll be back again soon with another video. We've been a bit sporadic at the moment, but we're trying to get back on track. So make sure you keep those notifications on, and when a new one's uploaded, you'll know.